be a lot more graceful at that. Oh, that's a nice bass. Hitting all the hooks. Okay, so if we go to my website, allinclusiveangler.com, you will see a link for lure building tutorials. Click on that and let the page load, and you'll notice some lures down here with question marks. Just ignore those for now. Go to the Lipless crankbait, click here for tutorial. So if you scroll down at this page, you'll see here's an interactive lure. And you'll see like an information sheet on this build with the description, requirements. These are all hyperlinked to either Amazon or Lure Parts Online. And I even have a starter pack here that you can download from Thingiverse, and basically it gives you a basic shape to start with that's already scaled. If you're using Maya 3D, you just import these, no scaling required. You just start with the file and begin working at I think the 13-minute mark. I'll put a tag there on the player for you. So yeah, if you download these, it's going to make your life a lot easier. If you don't want to and you want to do it from scratch, there's that option as well. And so if you want to do it from scratch, what I recommend doing is going up to the very top and going to that interactive lure and kind of expand this page out a little bit. And you can interact with this lure by clicking and dragging, seeing different sides of it. But you can also stop the animation with there's a little player at the bottom of the page with a pause button and a slider bar. So you want to pause it, slide the bar all the way to the left, so it brings it kind of centered where you can take a picture of the side view and the top view. And you want to capture both sides. Before we get started, I just want to show you how to use that starter pack. If you open Maya, go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, click on Settings, and then go from centimeter to millimeter and hit Save. And then you can just simply click and drag those files that you downloaded, and you might have to adjust your canvas, your grid, because they come in kind of big, but this is the size that you want them to be if you want to bring them into Prusa Slicer and not have to mess with scaling. So that's kind of nice. Yeah, it's a rough shape, but you can also hit a smoothing command. I think it's the number 3 key, and it'll smooth out your low polygon model to look pretty much ready to go. I mean, you could rig this one up pretty quickly at this point and just fish it and have no issue. But for this tutorial, I think I'll show you how I rig mine because it runs great. And also you can click and drag the hardware file, and it's going to lay over your shape perfectly. You won't have to move anything, and these are the final pieces that we'll need to set up our 3D print. Okay, so if we're going to model it from scratch, what you want to do is import your image planes. So that side view and that top view that I told you to capture from my website by using the interactive lure from Sketchfab. Just import that in and import your other screenshot. Now if they are scaled just a little bit different, you'll want to match them up and just do the best you can. Line up the back end with the front end, just keep scaling and sliding. Make sure you have modeling on. Go to your poly polygon tab up here, import the polygon cube. Use the basic cube and use the scale tool to size it. And once we get the length determined, we're going to add some subdivisions on the width, and I'm going to go with 8 subdivisions. And then we're going to just take a look at this, and it just basically created a block. And obviously it's too wide, but let's go to vertice mode. And let's continue on manipulating the shape, but first move the top view image plane to the top of the cube. And go back to vertice mode. Ideally, you should be able to see the vertices on the top, just barely. Let's go back to the side view. Let's turn the object symmetry off, and let's do a click and drag. And we'll just drag them straight down. Don't try to freehand it. You want to just keep them on the same axis as you pull down each vertice to outline the shape. I'll speed this up. Okay, so let's take a quick look here, and it looks like the block of wood was just carved out on one side to make the shape of the lure. So we have to further define the shape by going to the top view. Let's turn the object symmetry on the Y, and let's click and drag it from the top, and use the move tool. And let's bring it around and outline it like we did for the sides. And I'll speed this up. And don't worry about cutting corners if you need to. We're just doing a rough outline right here. So ignore that dramatic nosedive there. So now that we have a general outline, we need to add some subdivisions to the front and the back. So go to Insert Edge Loop tool. In between the first 2 subdivisions, let's add 1 loop. And then do the same thing for the tail. I know it's hard to see this, I apologize. And then once you add those edge loops, don't forget to go back and adjust them, because they're not going to fit your shape. So you have to make sure your image plane is back on and make those adjustments so that they outline your shape. If those edge loops that we just added weren't enough, feel free to add more. You can always just go in and add more edge loops as you go in and refine your shape. Just remember, the more edge loops you add, the more adjustments you're going to have to make to outline your shape. So we're going to do a little cleanup work here on the front. And don't forget to clean up the back too. And that's looking pretty good. So let's go to vertex mode. And if I go to the smooth command, you can see we get this weird shape, and it doesn't look anything like what we just did. Almost looks like a glide bait. So I think we need to add a few more edges. So let's go to edge mode and select all the edges on the top. And so once all the lines are selected up top, you'll see that you can just hit the bevel tool, and it gives you 2 lines. And we're going to use those to kind of retain the shape of the lure when we go to the smooth command. So now we'll do the bottom. And so once we have the bevel finished, you'll notice that it's still a little boxy. So let's go to the belly and keep it edge mode. Let's select all the edges on the belly and let's squeeze them together with the scale tool. Make sure your object symmetry is off when you do this. Okay, so now that we did the belly, let's do the top. Select all the vertices. And I want the vertice mode, by the way, because we're not doing the whole top because we want to keep the front end flat. So squeeze in the vertices together. Just like we did the edges on the bottom, we're just going to select a certain number, and then we're going to leave, it's a little over halfway before it starts tapering up back to a tight edge on the front. And the reason we're doing that is because we want a flat head on this lure. We don't want it to be rounded. So we'll keep those edges close together and continue squeezing these ones back here towards the back where the dorsal is going to be. And we're just going to keep checking our work, keep tapering it, refining. Okay, let's go to the sides. And what I like to do is bring down the sides a little bit more just to manipulate the shape, give it a little bit more round look. So I'm going to speed this up. Now if you do a smooth command, you'll see we're looking pretty good. But I kind of want a sharper edge up by the front, so let's go ahead and add another edge loop. And let's insert another edge loop right here up top between the two edges. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna give us a sharper edge up front, so we would want that as sharp as possible. And now that we have that edge added, let's just go ahead and add a couple more edge loops here on the side, because I kind of want that surface to be flat before I do the smooth command. So I'm going to add those edges now. And by the way, if you downloaded the starter pack, this right here is where you start. Okay, so we're going to continue here. The belly wasn't quite as round as what I was hoping, so I'm adding a little bit more space away from that bottom edge. Okay, so now let's go to face mode. And let's select the faces where we want the dorsal to be. And go ahead and click the bevel command. And as you can see, it created a few more faces for us to play with. Let's go back to vertice mode, and it also skewed a couple of the edges for us and gave us some weird bumps. So let's go back to vertice mode and let's clean those up a little bit. Select these back vertices and raise them. And we're going to do the same thing to the front. Now let's select these row. Make sure your object symmetry is on, and let's select the row of vertices here on the fin, where the fin's going to be. And let's bring those together a little bit closer. With those selected, let's use the move tool and slide them up and then back. Kind of squeeze them a little bit more. And when we do a preview, you can see that it's a little bit too round, it's not defined. So I'm going to select these outer edges and bring those in closer to the fin. And we're just going to keep tweaking those curves a little bit. And it gives you a little bit more definition there, so it looks more obvious that there's a fin. Let's select these vertices and merge them to center. I don't want those spaced right now. I want to see what it looks like if we combine these, and then pay attention to how I'm combining these vertices at the bottom of the fin. I'm going to do the same thing to the front. And this is actually reducing the polygon count for a model, so it'll be easier to manipulate this fin. Let's make sure our curves look right and nothing looks too extreme. I'm just eyeballing the symmetry right now. And so now if we go to show all, we'll look at our image planes and compare. But we'll need to go to wireframe mode to really get an idea. But you can see we're kind of missed the mark there because we weren't referencing that fin when we were adding that dorsal, so that's okay. Like I said, it's a low polygon fin, so we can easily manipulate it because it only has a couple, or has a few vertices to play with here, more than a few. And I'm keeping it above, I'm moving my vertices above the reference image because when you go to your smooth command, you'll see it squish down. So I kind of bounce between object mode and then the smooth preview. And once things look just about right, which I think is right there, you can see it's taken on the shape of my reference image a lot better. And okay, so now that we're finished with the dorsal, let's take a look at smoothing our object here. Now you want to save your file before you do this. But once we saved our file, let's smooth the object. That's simple, just click the object and click on smooth. And this is going to give us some more controls for when we add our gill. We can define our gills a little bit better than if it was a lower polygon. So let's begin selecting those vertices that are closest to the outline or the reference photo. And make sure your object symmetry is on because you don't want to shape your gills and then find out the other side didn't shape. It's really hard to keep them symmetrical when you do them individually. And we're just going to select one or two vertices at a time and just push them back and just kind of arrange them till we get a shape of a gill. And so what I like to do is just get two lines started first into a shape that I want. And then you kind of want to echo your lines until it kind of fades naturally into the rest of the body as you go. But just work your way up, start on the bottom. And don't get too crazy. Try to keep things on one axis for now, until you get a good shape that you're pleased with. Or you don't even need gills either. If you don't want to put gills on your lure, you just want to swim test them, that's fine too. So So for the row of lines that are closest to the head, you want to grab those and raise them. And then just continue to go through and refine them till the curves make sense. And then once you kind of get that shape outline and spacing between the gill plate and the body, just continue to blend that that shape into it. Just continue to blend that shape into the rest of the body. And for this design, I'm not going to have the gills raised too much, so I don't need to do much manipulating once I get to maybe 3 or 4 lines in. Okay, so now that we have our dorsal and our gill created, save your file. And once you saved your file, save it again. And let's copy and drag a copy of that lure straight up, just in case we mess up. And then focus on that lower one, and let's continue to build. So now we need to figure out how we're going to put our hollow chamber in here and where it's going to be at. So select your object and go to Modify, Convert, and then Smooth to Preview Polygon. And it's going to give us a real high polygon count model. So at this point, it's really hard to do any modifying. And so let's copy and paste it and scale it in just a little bit. So as we're scaling this chamber on the inside, I want my gills to line up with the outer shell. And so just keep an eye on that, and be careful not to make your walls too thin. It's probably better to go thicker than thin. And let's go ahead and hide the outer shell, and let's do a quick select on the head, and then let's get an outlining row selected. Hold down Shift, select one face, and then adjacent face, double click until you get a good selection here. And then we'll go ahead and select the rest of the faces inside to complete this selection. Oh, missed some on the outside. Oh, too much. Oh. Okay. And you might have selected some faces on accident, so when you hit delete, you might see messed up. So go ahead and go look around the model and deselect any faces you may have accidentally selected. Then go to Edit Mesh and delete Edge and Vertex. It's gonna give you this empty shape with no head. So we need to fill that in. And to fill that in is a simple command. Just go to Mesh, Fill Hole. And there's a couple ways you can remesh this face once you do it. You can probably just select the face and do a remesh command. I'm going to go the hard route, and I'm going to turn symmetry on, and I'm going to select vertices individually and connect them. So I'm going to speed that up here. Okay, so there we go. Looks like a pretty solid chamber that we're going to use. And if we need to scale it to make our walls thicker, we can always do that later. So let's go ahead and show the outer shell. And let's go to wireframe mode so we can see both. And so you can see where our chamber is going to be, because we're going to do a one-piece print with this lure. So we're going to do probably a solid infill in the front, and so our walls will be solid minus like the chamber in the back. So it should give us a pretty robust lure. Now you may be worried where that screw eye is going to go into in the back, and I will show you here in a second. If you downloaded my starter pack, you're gonna be quite pleased, and especially if you started modeling off my starter pack, you're gonna be quite pleased, because you can go over to my hardware file and drag it in, and what that does is it's going to line up the screw eyes, your eyes, where you're gonna put your circuit bill lip, where the 6-gram weight's gonna go, and none of it needs to be scaled. So you just bring it in, drag it in, it's going to be placed right where you need it to be. And so from this point, we can go ahead and select our chamber, and then select the rectangle in the back that's overlapping it. Then let's go to mesh, and let's subtract it. And as you can see, it cut a hole in our chamber, because we want that piece to be solid so our screw eye has something to secure to. Select the rods, and where the eyes are going to be, and then where the lead's going to be. Let's combine those. So go to mesh, combine. Let's show all. So what we're going to have to do next is we have to subtract your chamber from our outer shell. So let's go to wireframe mode, select the outer shell, and then if you zoom in, just click on the inner shell and it should highlight. Let's do another mesh subtract. And so there you go, it took it out, and so now we actually have one solid model that has a chamber. And so let's select our shell again, and then select that group that we combined earlier. So once we subtract it, you'll notice that now we have areas carved out for the eyes and the weight and the screw eyes as well. Now the last part that we need to do is take a look at the lips. Now there's two models here. There's one just for reference. That's the one that isn't winged out. We can ignore that one for now. So select your shell, and then select the winged out lip. And let's do another difference. And so now basically it's carved out an area that your circuit bill lip's going to sit on. And I'll explain the circuit bill lip idea later. But you can see that it's basically just a lid that's going to go on top of the lead weight, the 6-gram lead weight that we're going to glue in that compartment. So that's it for this tutorial. This lure is ready to get set up for the 3D printer, which is going to be my next part for this tutorial. So stay tuned, I'll have that released here soon, if not already. Thanks, take care.